the icy waters of the northern Arctic, amid the thickly packed ice drifting in the Kara Sea, a lone bottle drifts. Housed within is a single note. However, what it says is unknown. Perhaps it is a plea for help from a stranded ship, or a message detailing the fate of a lost Arctic expedition so that their family would not live in suspense. The wind howling shrill through the bergs is the only sound in this cold, desolate place. The crushing, thickly packed ice closes in again as the brief thaw freezes over once more, and the bottle is lost. Who might have written the message in the bottle, or thrown it into the icy water of the bay, and why, are all mysteries. The note inside will never be read, and the fate of those who cast it into the sea will remain unsolved. Of course, if such a message in a bottle existed is unknown. However, those who might have cast one like it into the sea were very real people. People who vanished, and to this day, their fate in the frozen north is unknown. This is the story, an unsolved mystery, of the Rusanov Expedition, one of the mighty voyages lost to the frozen wastes of the far north. In spring 1912, the Russian government was planning a great research expedition to the Arctic North, into a literal and political no man's land. The goal was to investigate coal deposits in Spitsbergen, today the largest and only permanently populated island of the Svalbard archipelago in far north Norway. The British, Americans, and Swedish had all already beaten Russia in establishing claims there. And also, despite reservations of his political background, geologist Vladimir Rusanov was asked to lead the expedition. Rusanov was born in 1875. In 1907, he overcame suspicions of the Russian government and took part in expeditions to the northern Arctic. Due to his travel experience in the region, any concerns of his political views were put aside to let him lead the 1912 expedition. He described the landscape of the Arctic North as wild and magnificent, and he was particularly interested in determining if a northern sea route from the Atlantic and Ob and Yenisei rivers existed, and his proposals and suggestions later led to the development of the northern sea route by the Soviet Union. Alexander Kuchin, born 1888, was chosen by Rusanov to be the captain of the ship that the expedition would use, the Hercules, a 63-ton ketch built in 1903, and serve as assistant head of the expedition as well. Originally, Rusanov wanted to build a ship with his own unique ideas and specifications in mind, but this was refused, and the ship Hercules was chosen for the expedition instead of a new one being built for it. Also on the expedition would be a biologist, a zoologist, a mate, a bosun, engineers, sailors, and Rusanov's own fiancée, who was working towards earning a geology PhD and a medical degree as well. Rusanov pushed for her inclusion and expressed her scientific abilities. In total, there were 11 people on board the Hercules when it set out. The expedition left on June 26, 1912. On July 3rd, they arrived in Belsund. After another 6 weeks, they had mapped various points of the island and staked 22 claims on various promising coal deposits they had discovered, and soon the work in Spitsbergen was complete. Rusanov then surprised everyone by announcing his plans to sail east instead of returning. He wanted to find the northern sea route, perhaps his greatest interest. After asking for volunteers to accompany him and sending 3 of the expedition members home, one of which was simply due to poor health, sending these 3 with the expedition's scientific collections and field reports and a message for St. Petersburg that said, "Am going east." It is unknown if the expedition members were aware of Rusanov's plan to change the expedition's goal. We know that the Russian government was not aware of it. Rusanov assured his team, though, that they would turn back if they became threatened by ice. The expedition was very well supplied, and the ship was well built. Rusanov was confident in his undertaking, but in truth his plan was not only incredibly risky, but some could argue irresponsible. On August 31st, Rusanov sent a message from a settlement back to St. Petersburg via a telegram, informing the government that they intended to go east across the Kara Sea, south of the Arctic Ocean, north of Russia and Siberia. It seems his intent was to try and reach the Northeast Passage, but what exactly the plan was, we don't know, but that is a good guess. After this message was sent, they continued on into the frozen north. They were never seen or heard from again. After this message, conditions in the Kara Sea became harsh over the winter of 1912 and 1913. The ice was thicker than usual. Then it opened up again, and the Hercules and all those on board her were gone. In the spring of 1913, concern for the Rusanov Expedition and two other Russian expeditions to the Arctic, the Brusilov and the Sedov expeditions, which vanished around the same time, was mounting. By August and September of 1914, all attempts to find traces of the lost expedition were unsuccessful. The outbreak of World War I stopped all searches for the next 20 years. If there were ever any messages thrown into the sea in bottles, pleas for help, they were never found. In 1934, the first traces were finally found by the crew of the Stalinets, which was carrying out a survey in the southeastern shoreline of the Kara Sea on an island later renamed Hercules Island. They found a wooden post inscribed Hercules 1913 and a cairn near the shoreline. With this, it became known that the expedition reached as far as the island and that it was possibly the site of the expedition's wintering over 1912 and 1913. Now, there are a lot of reported findings from over the following decades, so we'll just go through them one at a time. In 1949, it was reported that a 1947 survey party found bones and the remains of a campsite on Bolshevik Island, and it was suggested that this find was proof of the Hercules reaching the Laptev Sea northeast of the Kara Sea. It was added that due to northeasterly winds in 1912, the Rusanov expedition might have had an easy and ice-free opening to the area and then became trapped there afterward. Another find from 1921 that was not connected to the Rusanov expedition until the 1970s reported that old campsite fires, shotgun shells, coins, and a boat hook were discovered on the eastern shore of the Kara Sea, and these were later connected to the Rusanov expedition. In 2000, the suspected bones of Alexander Kuchin, the captain of the Hercules, were found near Mount Minin. The fate of the Rusanov expedition remains, to this day, an unsolved mystery and one of the great mysteries of Arctic exploration, standing alongside the likes of mysteries such as the Franklin expedition. But unlike the Franklin expedition from the 1840s, with this one, we don't have many pieces of the puzzle to give us a more or less complete picture on what happened. There's no traces of scurvy or cannibalism or anything like that. With this one, it's like they just vanished into thin air. There were no messages left behind that told us what had happened like there were in the Franklin expedition. It's just nothing. 1912 likewise proved lethal for other Russian Arctic expeditions too, as was mentioned earlier. The unthawed ice trapped the vessels St. Foka and St. Anna, as well as the Hercules. Some of those on the St. Anna managed to walk out and survive, but those left on the ship to man it were also never heard from again. The true fate of the Rusanov expedition remains unknown, but since ships like the HMS Terror can be found again, there's a chance that this expedition might be located again one day too. Until then, there are only the few scattered pieces we've found to go off of that can only give us a scattered map and very incomplete picture to follow. And the true fate of the Hercules, her crew, and where the wreck of the ship is, are all an unsolved mystery, one of many in the Arctic North. The goal was to investigate coal deposits in Spitsbergen, today the largest and only permanently populated island of the Svalbard archipelago in the far north of Norway. And I know I just butchered that name, but I'm not Norwegian, so if you are, please don't come to my door with torches and pitchforks.